The sun was setting behind the mountains of southern Spain, painting the sky with shades of gold and crimson. Travelers from every corner of the world stood silently on a hill, staring at a magnificent palace glowing in the fading light. Its walls seemed to whisper ancient secrets. Its towers stood proudly against the sky as if challenging time itself. This was not just a palace. This was a survivor. For more than 700 years, it had witnessed wars, betrayals, royal celebrations, invasions, and the rise and fall of empires. While countless castles had crumbled into dust, this palace remained standing. Many called it a miracle. Others called it a mystery. But few knew the incredible story hidden behind its walls. Long ago, in the 13th century, a young ruler named Muhammad I arrived on a rocky hill overlooking the city of Granada. His kingdom was surrounded by enemies. Powerful forces threatened his lands from every direction. Most rulers would have focused only on armies and weapons. Muhammad I had a different vision. He wanted to create something that would outlive him. Something that would tell future generations that beauty could survive even during difficult times. And so construction began. Workers, craftsmen, architects, and artists gathered from across the region. Day after day, year after year, they shaped stone, carved wood, and decorated walls with breathtaking patterns. The palace slowly rose from the hill. Its halls reflected sunlight like liquid gold. Its courtyards were filled with flowing water. Its gardens bloomed with colors that seemed almost magical. People who visited could hardly believe what they saw. It looked less like a building and more like a dream. Yet the palace was built during an age of uncertainty. Every year brought new dangers. Every year brought new threats. Still, construction continued. Generations of craftsmen added their talents to the growing masterpiece. Fathers taught sons. Masters trained apprentices. Each person left behind a small piece of their soul within the palace walls. As decades passed, the palace became the heart of a kingdom. Royal families walked through its corridors. Poets wrote verses inspired by its beauty. Musicians performed beneath its arches. Diplomats negotiated treaties within its chambers. The palace became a symbol of hope and culture. But no kingdom lasts forever. Far beyond the palace walls, powerful armies were expanding. The rulers who lived inside knew the danger was approaching. Year after year, the threat grew larger. Eventually, the day everyone feared arrived. Enemy forces surrounded the kingdom. The final chapter of an era was beginning. The people of Granada watched anxiously as uncertainty filled the air. Would the palace survive? Would it be destroyed like so many monuments before it? Nobody knew. The future seemed dark. The kingdom's rulers faced impossible decisions. They could fight and risk complete destruction. Or they could surrender and hope the palace might be spared. The choice would change history forever. One cold winter morning, the final agreement was reached. The kingdom surrendered. Many feared the worst. Throughout history, conquering armies often destroyed symbols of previous rulers. Beautiful buildings were burned. Treasures vanished. Ancient knowledge disappeared forever. People feared this palace would suffer the same fate. But something unexpected happened. The conquerors entered the palace and were amazed. Its beauty was unlike anything they had ever seen. The delicate carvings. The peaceful courtyards. The elegant architecture. Everything seemed extraordinary. Instead of destroying it, they chose to preserve it. The palace had survived its greatest threat. But its challenges were far from over. Centuries passed. Empires rose and fell. Kings came and went. Earthquakes shook the land. Storms battered the walls. Neglect slowly spread through parts of the complex. Sections deteriorated. Gardens faded. Some rooms were abandoned. Yet somehow, the palace endured. Like a stubborn guardian refusing to surrender, it continued standing. Visitors arrived from distant countries. Artists painted it. Writers described it. Historians studied it. Every generation became fascinated by its story. How could a palace survive for so long? How had it escaped destruction when so many others vanished? The answers seemed hidden within the walls themselves. As the years turned into centuries, legends began to grow. Some believed the palace was protected by destiny. Others believed its beauty made people unwilling to harm it. Whatever the reason, one fact remained undeniable. The palace was still there. 700 years after construction began, its towers still overlooked Granada. Its fountains still reflected the sky. Its courtyard still welcomed visitors. And its story was only beginning. Before we continue, if you enjoy discovering hidden stories from history, ancient mysteries, and incredible places that survived against all odds, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Every week, we'll uncover fascinating stories that history almost forgot. The palace had survived wars. It had survived invasions. It had survived the collapse of kingdoms. But now it faced an enemy more powerful than any army. Time. Unlike soldiers, time never stopped attacking. Every day, every season, every century left its mark. Rain seeped into ancient stone. Wind wore away delicate carvings. Heat and cold weakened foundations. Little by little, the palace began to suffer. At first, the changes were barely noticeable. A crack here. A damaged wall there. A fading decoration. Nothing seemed alarming. But over decades and centuries, the damage accumulated. Rooms that once hosted royal ceremonies became silent. Gardens lost their former splendor. Some structures stood dangerously close to collapse. Travelers arriving in later centuries found a palace that was still beautiful but clearly wounded. Many feared it would eventually disappear. History is filled with magnificent monuments that slowly vanished because nobody protected them. The palace seemed destined for the same fate. Then something remarkable happened. People began to realize what was at stake. Historians documented its significance. Artists celebrated its beauty. Writers shared stories that captured imaginations around the world. Interest in the palace grew rapidly. Visitors crossed oceans just to see it. They walked through its halls in awe. They stared at the intricate designs covering walls and ceilings. They listened to fountains that had been flowing for centuries. And they understood something important. If the palace was lost, humanity would lose an irreplaceable piece of history. Preservation efforts began. Experts studied every detail. Architects examined damaged structures. Craftsmen learned ancient techniques used by the original builders. Restoration became a mission. It wasn't easy. Every repair required patience. Every decision required careful planning. The goal was not to change the palace, the goal was to save it. Workers spent years restoring sections that had suffered damage. Stone by stone. Tile by tile. Pattern by pattern. They brought life back to forgotten spaces. The process often felt endless. But progress continued. Meanwhile, millions of visitors arrived each year. People from different cultures and backgrounds shared the same reaction. Wonder. The palace had a unique ability to connect people across centuries. Standing inside its courtyards, visitors could imagine the lives of those who walked there hundreds of years earlier. They could almost hear distant footsteps. Almost hear conversations carried by the wind. Almost feel history surrounding them. The palace became more than a monument. It became a bridge between past and present. Yet new challenges emerged. Modern tourism brought opportunities and risks. Large crowds placed pressure on delicate structures. Conservation teams faced difficult choices. How could they allow people to experience the palace while also protecting it? The answer required balance. Careful management. Scientific research. Long-term planning. Experts understood that preservation was not a one-time achievement. It was an ongoing responsibility. Each generation had to contribute. Each generation had to care. Because survival was never guaranteed. Today, when visitors arrive at the palace, they see magnificent architecture, peaceful gardens, and elegant courtyards. What they may not realize is how close this treasure came to being lost. Behind every restored wall is a story of dedication. Behind every preserved room is the effort of countless people who refuse to let history disappear. The palace's greatest lesson is not about kings or battles. It is about resilience. For 700 years, it endured challenges that seemed impossible. It faced destruction. It faced neglect. It faced time itself. And yet it survived. Its story reminds us that beauty can outlast conflict. That culture can survive change. That the creations of one generation can inspire many more. As evening falls over Granada, sunlight once again paints the palace in shades of gold. Visitors pause to take photographs. Children listen to guides explain its history. Dreamers stand quietly, imagining centuries gone by. The palace continues its journey through time. 700 years have passed. And still it stands. Not as a relic of the past. But as proof that some stories refuse to end. The palace that survived 700 years is more than a building. It is a symbol. A symbol of endurance. A symbol of creativity. A symbol of humanity's ability to create something so extraordinary that generations unite to protect it. And perhaps that is the real secret behind its survival. Not luck. Not magic. Not destiny. People. People who admired it. People who preserved it. People who believed its story deserved to continue. Now, 7 centuries later, the palace is still writing new chapters. And every visitor who walks through its gates becomes part of that story. If you enjoyed this journey through history and want more fascinating stories about lost civilizations, mysterious landmarks, forgotten kingdoms, and incredible historical secrets, subscribe to the channel and join our growing community of explorers. There are many more extraordinary stories waiting to be discovered. And somewhere in the fading light, the palace continues watching over Granada. Just as it has for 700 unforgettable years.